She was just enjoying a quiet day at the park, until everything changed in an instant. What happened next will leave you speechless. Watch until the end to discover the shocking truth. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. The sun dipped low behind the distant buildings, casting long shadows over the quiet park. On a worn wooden bench, an elderly black man named Samuel Johnson sat peacefully, enjoying the evening stillness. At 74, Samuel had seen enough of the world to appreciate these simple moments: the cool breeze brushing his skin, the sound of children laughing somewhere in the distance, and the rustling of leaves above him. Samuel had been coming to this park for years. It was his favorite place to escape the noise of the city, to remember his late wife, and to reflect on the life he had lived. Wearing his old gray coat and a flat cap pulled low over his brow, he looked like any other senior enjoying retirement, blending seamlessly into the serene backdrop. Across the street, a black and white patrol car slowly cruised by. Inside, Officers Davis and Miller scanned the park, exchanging glances. They were not looking for peace or quiet. They were hunting. Earlier that day, a black man in his 20s had fled from a failed arrest nearby. The chief wanted results, and these officers were eager to provide them, no matter the cost. "There," Davis said, nodding toward Samuel. "Matches the description. Black male, dark clothes, sitting alone." Miller frowned. "He looks kinda old, don't you think?" Davis shrugged. "Old, young, who cares? He'll do." Without hesitation, they turned sharply and parked at the curb. Slamming the doors behind them, they strode across the grass toward Samuel. He looked up, puzzled but calm, as the two officers approached with grim faces. "Evening, officers," Samuel said politely, tipping his cap slightly. "Stand up now," barked Davis, pulling his baton from his belt. Samuel blinked, confused. "Is there a problem, sir?" "You heard me. Up, now," Miller repeated, his hand hovering over his holster. Samuel, grunting with effort, slowly rose to his feet. His knees cracked and he winced, steadying himself on the bench. Before he could ask another question, Davis grabbed him roughly by the arm and twisted it behind his back. "Hey, now, there's no need for that," Samuel protested, but Davis yanked his arm higher, forcing him to stoop. "You're under arrest for evading police custody," Davis snapped. Samuel gasped. "I don't even know what you're talking about." Miller shoved him forward and Samuel stumbled, almost falling. "Sure you don't," Miller sneered. Despite Samuel's age and obvious frailty, the officers treated him like a dangerous criminal. Davis cuffed him tightly, the cold metal biting into his wrists. Samuel winced, but he said nothing more. Years of experience had taught him that arguing would only make things worse. The officers dragged Samuel toward the patrol car. A few passers-by watched but quickly looked away, not wanting to get involved. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear for himself, but from a deep, gnawing anger. He had lived through the civil rights era, seen friends beaten and jailed for no reason, and now, in his twilight years, he was enduring the same humiliation. As they reached the car, Davis shoved Samuel hard against the side, searching him aggressively. "No weapons," Davis muttered. "No surprise there," Miller added with a smirk. They forced Samuel into the back seat. The door slammed shut with a loud thunk, trapping him inside. Samuel leaned back against the hard seat, his breathing shallow. His mind raced, trying to understand how sitting quietly in a park had turned into this nightmare. As the car pulled away from the curb, a sleek black SUV turned onto the street. Inside, Marcus Johnson, Samuel's son, was returning from a long shift. Marcus was the recently appointed chief of police, and he prided himself on his integrity, his commitment to justice. He spotted the patrol car speeding away and, in a fleeting moment, caught a glimpse of a figure in the back seat. His heart stopped. Was that his father? Without hesitation, Marcus turned the wheel sharply and followed the patrol car. Inside the patrol car, Davis and Miller were oblivious to the SUV tailing them. They laughed and joked cruelly, mocking Samuel. "Bet this one's got a rap sheet a mile long," Miller said. Samuel remained silent, staring out the window, his jaw clenched tightly. "You think you're too good to talk to us, old man?" Davis taunted. Samuel said nothing. He had seen men like them before, men who thought a badge gave them the right to humiliate and destroy. Behind them, Marcus kept his distance, his mind spinning. He pulled out his phone and dialed the precinct. The officer on duty answered on the second ring. "This is Chief Marcus Johnson. Patch me through to dispatch immediately." "Yes, sir," came the quick reply. Moments later, Marcus was connected. "This is Chief Johnson. I need the location and assignment of Officers Davis and Miller now." There was a pause, and then the dispatcher answered nervously. "They reported they were responding to a suspect sighting in Lincoln Park, sir." Marcus's blood boiled. "Tell them to hold their position at the station when they return. Do not let them leave." "Understood?" "Yes, sir." As Marcus hung up, his hands tightened on the steering wheel. His father's face, so dignified, so proud, flashed in his mind. The thought of him being manhandled, disrespected, treated like a criminal made Marcus's vision blur with rage. In the back seat, Samuel closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought of his wife, his children, the sacrifices he had made to build a better life for them. And now, this. He opened his eyes and stared forward grimly. He would not be broken. Not now. Not ever. The patrol car sped through the streets, heading toward the precinct, and, unknowingly, toward a reckoning that none of them could have foreseen. The patrol car screeched to a halt in the precinct parking lot. Davis and Miller exchanged a glance, both smug and satisfied. They dragged Samuel out roughly, ignoring the way his body struggled to move against the stiff metal cuffs biting into his wrists. Samuel stumbled but caught himself before falling. His dignity remained intact, even as they shoved him forward like he was some dangerous criminal. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The dull murmur of officers talking, phones ringing, and doors creaking filled the air. No one gave a second glance to Davis and Miller as they hauled Samuel inside, their laughter crude and grating. They passed the front desk where Officer Brennan sat, typing lazily on his computer. He glanced up, frowning as he recognized Samuel's face, but quickly looked away, deciding it wasn't his business to interfere. Samuel said nothing. His heart thudded in his chest, but his face stayed calm, composed. He kept his eyes forward, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing fear. As they pushed him down a hallway toward the holding cells, Davis leaned in close. "You think you're special, huh? Sitting there like you own the damn park." Samuel didn't respond. He knew their goal was to provoke him, to make him say something they could twist and use against him. He wouldn't give them that. "Answer me, old man," Miller barked, slamming him against the wall. The force knocked the air from Samuel's lungs. He gasped, but managed to stay standing. "Pathetic," Davis sneered. "Just like all of you." Samuel bit down hard on his anger. Years of surviving taught him when to fight and when to endure. They dragged him farther down the corridor, past closed doors and blank faces. One door stood ajar, leading to an empty side hall rarely used after hours. Davis and Miller exchanged a look, an unspoken agreement. Without warning, Davis yanked Samuel into the side hall. Miller followed, pulling the door shut behind them. Samuel braced himself, but nothing could have prepared him for the brutal punch that landed squarely in his stomach. He doubled over, coughing violently. "You think you can sit there, act like you're better than us?" Davis hissed. Miller struck next, an open-handed slap across Samuel's face that snapped his head sideways. His cap flew off and landed on the grimy floor. Samuel fought to stay conscious, blinking through the stars that exploded across his vision. Another punch, another. Blow after blow rained down on him. Fists, elbows, brutal kicks to his legs and ribs. His body ached, every nerve screaming. He could taste blood in his mouth, metallic and sharp. Still, he stayed silent. Still, he refused to cry out. "Look at him," Miller jeered. "Won't even fight back. Coward." "Let's see if he stays quiet after this," Davis said, drawing back his fist. Before Davis could land another hit, the door suddenly slammed open. Marcus stood there. For a moment, no one moved. His uniform was immaculate, the badge on his chest gleaming under the harsh lights. His face was carved from stone, his eyes burning with a fury so cold it seemed to freeze the air around him. The two officers froze, their hands still half raised. Samuel sagged against the wall, barely able to lift his head. Marcus took one slow step forward. "Uncuff him," Marcus said, his voice dangerously low. Neither Davis nor Miller moved. "I said, uncuff him," Marcus repeated, each word dropping like a hammer. Davis swallowed hard. His hand shook slightly as he fumbled for the keys. The cuffs clicked open, and Samuel's arms dropped heavily to his sides. Marcus stepped closer, standing between his father and the officers. He looked at Davis, then at Miller. "You assaulted an innocent man. You assaulted my father," Marcus said quietly. Davis's face paled. Miller's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Did you even check his ID? Did you even ask his name?" Marcus demanded. Silence. Samuel straightened slowly, his body trembling from pain but his eyes clear. Marcus turned slightly, placing a steadying hand on Samuel's shoulder. "We're going to the chief's office," Marcus said. "Now." Davis and Miller hesitated. "Now!" Marcus barked, his voice snapping like a whip. Heads turned in the hallway as Marcus marched them forward, Samuel walking carefully beside him. Whispers buzzed around the station like angry bees. "Isn't that the chief's father? God, what did they do? They're finished." The walk to the chief's office felt endless. Samuel's legs shook with each step, but he refused to ask for help. Finally, they reached the door. Marcus threw it open without knocking. The deputy chief, a burly white man named Reynolds, looked up from behind the desk, frowning. "What the hell's going on?" "Sit down," Marcus snapped at Davis and Miller, pointing to the chairs across from the desk. The two officers obeyed without protest. Reynolds rose slowly. His eyes flicked from Marcus to Samuel to the battered officers. "What happened?" Marcus stood stiffly. "These two arrested my father without cause, assaulted him, abused him." Reynolds's face darkened. "Is this true?" Davis opened his mouth. "Sir, we thought he was a suspect." "A 74-year-old man sitting on a park bench?" Marcus said, his voice sharp. "Without running his ID? Without probable cause?" Reynolds held up a hand. "I want full statements, written and signed. Now." Marcus leaned forward. "I also want the security footage from the corridor. Immediately." Reynolds nodded grimly. Samuel stood quietly, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. His eyes met Marcus's, and something unspoken passed between them. Pride, sorrow, rage. Reynolds looked at Samuel, and for the first time that night there was something close to respect in his eyes. "I'm sorry this happened, Mr. Johnson," Reynolds said awkwardly. Samuel said nothing. He didn't need their apologies. He needed justice, and with Marcus at his side, he knew he would get it. The door shut behind them with a heavy thud, leaving the precinct buzzing with tension and fear. The next morning, the entire station was buzzing. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. Every officer knew what had happened the night before, and the atmosphere was thick with tension and unease. In the chief's office, Marcus stood rigidly by the window, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Across from him sat Reynolds, flipping through the reports Davis and Miller had been forced to write. Their statements were weak, filled with half-truths and flimsy excuses. Marcus didn't need to read them. He had seen enough last night. He had seen enough his entire life. A sharp knock on the door broke the silence. "Come in," Reynolds said. The door opened, and the two officers entered, looking smaller than they had the night before. Gone was the arrogance, the mocking smiles. Today, Davis and Miller looked like men walking to their execution. They stood at attention, eyes averted. Reynolds folded his hands on the desk and regarded them coolly. "Do you have anything else to say for yourselves before I make my decision?" he asked. Davis licked his lips nervously. "Sir, it was a misunderstanding. We thought—" "You thought wrong," Reynolds snapped. "You acted without cause. You assaulted an innocent man, and you humiliated this department." Miller shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, please, we have families, kids. This was a mistake." Marcus stepped forward. "A mistake that could have ended with my father in the hospital, or worse." His voice was cold, stripped of any sympathy. Reynolds nodded grimly. "Effective immediately. You're both suspended without pay, pending a full internal investigation. Turn in your badges and weapons." Both men paled. Davis hesitated as if about to argue, but one look from Marcus silenced him. Slowly, they removed their badges, placing them on the desk with trembling hands. Then, their guns. The metallic clink echoed in the heavy silence. "You're lucky, that's all for now," Reynolds said. "But once the footage is reviewed and the official complaints are filed, you may be looking at criminal charges." Miller's face crumpled. "Sir, please, I can't lose my job. I have 2 daughters." "You should have thought about that before you decided to brutalize an old man for sitting in a park," Marcus said sharply. Davis opened his mouth, but no words came. His shoulders slumped in defeat. "Get out," Reynolds said. They turned and left, the door closing quietly behind them. Marcus exhaled slowly, his anger still simmering beneath the surface. Reynolds looked at him. "I'll make sure the footage is preserved, and I'll personally oversee the investigation." Marcus nodded. "Good. And, Marcus—" Reynolds hesitated. "Your father, how is he?" Marcus's face softened slightly. "Hurting, but proud." Reynolds gave a short nod. "He should be." After a moment, Marcus turned and left the office, walking down the long hallway toward the front of the building. As he passed, conversation stopped. Eyes followed him, some filled with sympathy, others with fear, a few with resentment. Marcus didn't care. He pushed through the front doors and out into the bright morning. Samuel was waiting for him outside, sitting in a wheelchair, his injuries too severe for him to walk easily yet. A large bruise bloomed across his cheek, and his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the blanket on his lap. Marcus crouched down beside him. "You didn't have to come," Marcus said. Samuel smiled faintly. "I wasn't about to let you do this alone." Marcus swallowed hard against the lump in his throat. "They're suspended," he said. "Investigation's startin'. Criminal charges are likely." Samuel nodded slowly. "Good." There was a long silence between them, filled with unspoken words, anger, sorrow, pride. "You were right to stand up to them," Samuel said finally, "even if it cost you everything." "It won't," Marcus said firmly. "Not this time." He looked around the precinct, feeling the weight of dozens of stares pressing against his back. Change was coming, whether they wanted it or not. Samuel's hand reached out and squeezed Marcus's. "I'm proud of you, son," he said quietly. Marcus blinked against the sting in his eyes. "Come on," he said gruffly. "Let's get you home." He wheeled Samuel carefully toward the waiting car. As they drove away, neither of them looked back. Inside the station, the news was already spreading beyond the walls. Calls were coming in. Reporters were asking questions. Community leaders were demanding answers, and Davis and Miller sat alone in a back room, stripped of their badges, their careers in ruins, their futures uncertain. They had laughed at Samuel. They had mocked him. Now they were facing the consequences of their cruelty, and it was only the beginning. For Marcus and Samuel, the fight for justice had only just begun. The following days were a whirlwind. News of the incident spread like wildfire, igniting outrage across the city. Social media exploded with posts demanding justice for Samuel Green. Local news outlets replayed the footage again and again. The brutal arrest, the mockery, the sheer disregard for human dignity. Outside the police station, crowds began to gather. At first, it was a handful of people holding signs. Then it grew into hundreds. Chants filled the air. Justice for Samuel. End police brutality. Samuel sat by the window at home, watching the news coverage with a mixture of sadness and hope. His bruises were healing slowly, but the emotional scars were far deeper. He never imagined his pain would spark a movement. Marcus stayed close to him, barely leaving his side. He fielded calls from reporters, community leaders, and even national civil rights organizations. Everyone wanted to speak to the son who stood up to his own department. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus stood before the crowd outside the station. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust toward him. Samuel, watching on TV, saw the fierce determination in his son's eyes. "I'm not just a police chief," Marcus began, his voice steady and strong. "I am a black man. I am a son. I am a member of this community. What happened to my father was an act of racism, violence, and cowardice, and it is unacceptable." The crowd roared its approval. "We will not allow those who wear a badge to think they are above the people they swore to protect. We demand accountability, transparency, and real change. Not just for my father, but for every person who has been mistreated and silenced." Chants of "accountability now" rose into the night sky. Inside the station, officers watched from the windows, their faces grim. Some supported Marcus quietly. Others resented him, feeling betrayed. But Marcus didn't care. The line had been drawn. The next morning, formal charges were filed against Davis and Miller: assault, misconduct, and falsification of reports. They were arrested and led out of the station in handcuffs, the same way they had once dragged Samuel across the park. The image of the two disgraced officers being taken away splashed across every news channel. Samuel saw it and felt a strange, bittersweet satisfaction. Justice, slow and painful, was moving. Later that day, Marcus visited Samuel at home. He found his father sitting in the kitchen, a cup of coffee trembling slightly in his hands. "They arrested them," Marcus said quietly, pulling out a chair. Samuel nodded. "I saw." A heavy silence hung between them. "Does it feel like enough?" Marcus asked finally. Samuel stared into his cup. "Nothing can undo what they did, but it's a start." Marcus looked at his father, the deep lines on his face, the strength still burning in his eyes. "You didn't deserve any of it," Marcus said, his voice breaking. Samuel reached across the table, placing a hand on his son's. "We fight so the next man, the next woman, the next child doesn't have to go through this." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes, but he blinked them away. "I'm proud of you, Dad," he whispered. "And I'm proud of you," Samuel said. That night, Marcus sat alone in his living room, scrolling through messages of support pouring in from across the country. He saw people sharing their own stories of injustice, their own calls for change. It wasn't just about Samuel anymore. It was bigger, deeper. It was about every life that had been crushed beneath the weight of racism and indifference. Marcus knew the road ahead would be long. There would be resistance. There would be anger. But there was also hope. Fragile, flickering, but alive. And he would not let that hope die. The next morning, Samuel insisted on attending the next protest, despite Marcus's objections. Wrapped warmly against the chill, he sat in his wheelchair at the front of the march, holding a sign that read, "Justice for All." As they moved through the streets, Marcus walking proudly beside him, the crowd swelled. Voices rose together, demanding a better world. At the courthouse steps, Samuel was helped onto a small stage. He looked out over the sea of faces, young, old, black, white, brown, all united. He took a deep breath. "I didn't ask to become a symbol," he said, his voice rough but strong. "I'm just a man who wanted to sit in the sun. But if my pain can spark change, if my suffering can awaken this city, then it was not in vain." The crowd erupted into cheers. Samuel's eyes found Marcus's in the crowd. Pride and love passed silently between them. The fight wasn't over, but neither were they. Weeks passed, but the fire ignited by Samuel's ordeal continued to burn brightly. The city was no longer the same. Community meetings were held every night, packed with residents demanding reforms. The mayor, under immense pressure, promised sweeping changes to the police department. New policies were drafted. Mandatory body cameras, racial bias training, and a civilian review board with real power. Marcus oversaw every step personally. He didn't trust the old systems anymore. Too many times, promises were made only to be forgotten once the public outrage faded. This time, he was determined it would be different. Samuel, meanwhile, became a local hero. His quiet strength and dignity inspired people far beyond the city's borders. Interviews with him aired on national news. Journalists camped outside his modest home, eager for a few words. But Samuel remained humble. He never sought fame. All he ever wanted was peace, for himself, for his family, for his people. One sunny afternoon, Marcus wheeled Samuel into a newly renovated park, the very same park where everything had begun. New signs had been installed, benches repaired, flowers planted. A large plaque stood at the entrance engraved with bold letters, in honor of Samuel Green, whose courage sparked a movement for justice and equality. Samuel stared at it for a long moment, his eyes misting over. "I don't know if I deserve this," he murmured. "You do," Marcus said firmly. They moved further into the park, past families playing, couples strolling hand in hand, children laughing freely. It was peaceful. It was what Samuel had wanted that day. Just a place to rest and breathe. They stopped beneath a tall oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Marcus pulled out a blanket and spread it on the grass. He helped Samuel onto it, careful of his healing injuries. They sat together, watching the world go by. "You did good, son," Samuel said after a while. Marcus smiled faintly. "We did good." Samuel chuckled softly. "You always were stubborn." "Runs in the family," Marcus replied. They fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves and distant laughter. After some time, a young boy approached them shyly, holding a small notebook and a pen. "Excuse me, sir," he said to Samuel. "Are you Mr. Green?" Samuel nodded, surprised. "My teacher told us about what you did," the boy said. "You're really brave. Could I have your autograph?" Samuel's face broke into a wide, warm smile. He took the notebook with trembling hands and carefully signed his name. The boy beamed. "Thank you, sir. I want to be brave like you when I grow up." Samuel ruffled the boy's hair gently. "You already are, son." The boy ran off, clutching the notebook like a treasure. Samuel turned to Marcus, shaking his head in disbelief. "Imagine that. Me signing autographs." "You earned it," Marcus said. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the park. As the light bathed them in warmth, Samuel leaned back against the tree, his eyes closing in contentment. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The battle had been hard, the scars deep, but looking round, seeing the joy, the unity, the change, it was worth it. Nearby, more people arrived, gathering beneath the plaque. Some knelt to touch it reverently, others stood quietly, reading the words. A few wiped away tears. Marcus watched them, pride swelling in his chest. This was the legacy his father had created. Not through violence or hatred, but through resilience, dignity, and unwavering strength. Samuel opened his eyes and looked at his son. "Promise me," he said softly, "you'll keep fighting, not with anger, not with fists, but with your heart." "I promise," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Samuel smiled, a small, content smile, and as the sun set over the park, father and son sat together beneath the old oak tree, 2 generations bound by love, pain, and an unbreakable will to make the world better. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who would come after. The fight was not over, but neither was hope. And in the quiet peace of that evening, it was clear. Change had already begun. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment below. Your support helps us create more powerful stories. See you in the next video.